More than 250,000 are eligible to vote for the first time, and most are not expected to vote Likud. Pollsters predict Israeli votes will be fragmented amongst half of the 25 parties running for parliament. Most of the electorate will vote Labor or Likud, but the campaigns have failed to catch fire in spite of the critical issues facing the country.
People don't care anymore. They say if Rabin will be or if Shamir will be, it will be the same.
Watching closely from behind army barricades are 1.8 million Palestinians prevented from entering Israel on Election Day. While most appear to prefer a labor-led government, which is expected to move forward faster on the peace process, Palestinian spokeswoman Hanana Shrawi says her people can do business with any government committed to negotiations. Though Labor is expected to come out ahead in this election, that by no means spells victory. Without a clear majority, Rabin will have to form his government either with a coalition of left-wing and religious parties, or what observers predict will happen, by joining forces with the Likud in another national unity government. Any alliance could take weeks, even months, to patch together. Linda Scherzer, CNN, Jerusalem.
The polls close in about 5 hours, and we hope to have early results in a series of reports for you on the International Hour at 3 Eastern.
Erupted in yet another former Soviet republic, this time Moldova. It's a region with strong historical ties to neighboring Romania. Ethnic Russians declared their autonomy and began to battle Moldovan troops, fearing that Moldova was moving toward actual union with Romania. Russia's Boris Yeltsin is threatening to send in troops, and that would be the first such outward Russian show of force in another former republic. Ethnic Russians are saying about 1,000 people have been killed or wounded in Moldova since Friday. Meanwhile, Mr. Yeltsin and his Ukrainian counterpart, Leonid Kravchuk, reportedly have hammered out an agreement today on another key issue, the control of the Black Sea Fleet. Reuters news agency says portions of the former Soviet fleet are to be divided between the two countries, and the remainder reportedly would fall under some joint command.
UN officials are giving up hope of opening Sarajevo's airport to mercy flights anytime soon. The capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina came under new mortar attack today after a night of heavy shelling. The UN spokesman in Sarajevo described the barrage by Serb gunners as all-out war for a few hours. The UN says it needs 48 hours of calm before it can open the airport. The chief negotiator headed for new truce talks today, but said that he was not optimistic. It is now reported that the Bosnian, Serbian, and Croatian presidents have agreed to new talks. They are to take place this week in Strasbourg under the mediation of European Community envoy Lord Carrington. In France, both the government and radical farmers are claiming victory after a violent traffic snarling protest. The farmers set up roadblocks on highways leading to Paris to protest European Community reforms that will cut farm subsidies. 6 officers and 1 farmer were reported hurt when tractors charged a line of riot police at Abli. Farmers say the protest cut off 15 major roads. The government says there were minor traffic tie-ups for about 4 hours. Moderate farm unions support the EC reforms. We'll have more on this story later this hour from CNN's Christiane Amanpour.
The United States is bracing for a rail strike that could cripple passenger and freight service, and if allowed to go on, even the economy. Amtrak and union negotiators met yesterday to try to avoid a possible walkout at midnight Eastern Time. They say they're deadlocked on wages, job security, and severance. If a strike does happen, Amtrak has a deal with Greyhound bus service, calling for the bus line to honor the tickets of its railway passengers on certain routes. Rail strike could affect 600,000 passengers daily and cost businesses $600 million every day.
Convicted mob boss John Gotti has been sentenced to life in prison. He was convicted in April on murder and racketeering charges. Yesterday, a federal judge refused a defense request for a delay in the sentencing. Defense attorneys wanted a hearing to examine claims that the prosecutor improperly dismissed a juror before the trial began.
A Fox television executive has lost his job because he had hired a male stripper to perform during a presentation about censorship. Steve Chow, who had headed the Fox-owned television stations, was speaking last Friday in Colorado to a group of company executives and others, including the Defense Secretary Dick Cheney and his wife, when the stripper appeared and began stripping. Fox chairman Rupert Murdoch fired Chow soon after this presentation, calling it a tremendous misjudgment. Some glitches developed for a man whose wealth derives from the efficient use of computers. A poll shows a big jump in voter disapproval now for Ross Perot. And a human rights organization is charging the United States Border Patrol with brutality. It's all coming up on World Day.
We were having fun until Thomas put in our new money management program.
Select your investments.
All these investment categories popped up.
Stocks, bonds, T-bills.
That's easy. We only have one.
Why?
That's when I wonder, does everyone have all these?
Common sense says any investment plan should be diversified, and Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can make it easy.
Last night, it really hit us.
This place sounds like Wall Street tonight.
We can barely keep up with our work, let alone our investments. That's when I decided I'm going to find something that can do it all.
I'm going to do some research.
You can make just one investment in Fidelity Asset Manager, a mutual fund that gradually adjusts its portfolio for changing markets with no sales charge. It can be great for an IRA, too. So call Fidelity now for a free fact kit on how to diversify in one easy step with Fidelity Asset Manager. Call 1-800-356-8100. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
Dentists tell you to change your toothbrush every 3 months. So does the Oral-B indicator. When the blue band fades halfway, it's time for a new brush. The indicator from Oral-B, the brand more dentists use.
The 92 conventions. In this historic election year, one network will bring you more news, more analysis, more live reporting. For convention coverage that goes beyond gavel to gavel, there's only one network to watch, CNN.
There is a late survey that shows President Bush now narrowly leading his likely November opponents, and some of the bloom is off Ross Perot's image. The New York Times CBS News poll of more than 1,000 registered voters shows Mr. Bush leading Perot 32% to 30%, with Democrat Bill Clinton in third at 24%. And Perot's disapproval ratings have more than doubled to 20% since April, according to this poll. Well, President Bush expressed his outrage over reports that Perot had investigated his family and Mr. Bush's conduct while he was vice president. On CNN's Larry King Live Monday evening, Perot campaign spokesman Tom Luce called that investigation report a distortion.
Vice President Dan Quayle is going after the parent company of a record label that released a rap song about killing police officers. Quayle took on Time Warner and the song by Ice-T called Cop Killer when he spoke to the National Association of Sheriffs yesterday.
It is wrong for a powerful, influential corporation like Time Warner to make money off a record that says it's okay to kill cops. My friends, it's almost impossible to believe that the entertainment industry would produce something so revolting and outrageous.
The Clintons made it to Broadway last night. The Democratic presidential candidate and his wife were in New York for a fundraiser hosted by some stars of New York theater. Clinton told the crowd he wants to revise standards for grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and increase federal spending on AIDS research. But that was not good enough for some gay activists who heckled Clinton. Clinton responded by saying the country needs to listen more and shout less.
A report by America's Watch, that's a human rights group, says the abuse of illegal immigrants into the United States is on the rise, and it points a finger at border guards. We get more from CNN's Greg Lamont.
Family members of Dario Miranda Valenzuela are in a state of grief. The 26-year-old laborer from Nogales, Mexico, was shot twice in the back and killed by the U.S. Border Patrol. The family says he was heading for Tucson, Arizona to find construction work.
They saw the immigration and they started running, and they told them, stop or we're going to kill you. and they didn't stop.
Border Patrol officer Michael Elmer has been charged with first-degree murder in the case. There was more death earlier this month when 4 teenagers, a parent and a Mexican illegal, were killed following a high-speed chase that ended in a crash in front of a high school. The Border Patrol was in pursuit of a van carrying 13 illegals. The deaths come at a time of increased reports of alleged Border Patrol abuse of people trying to enter the country illegally.
The physical abuse is up dramatically. One day last week we had 5 cases of physical abuse, of beatings, of not only undocumented people, but also legal residents.
More than half of all illegals entering the country from Mexico do so along the U.S. border with Tijuana.
Yesterday we tried to cross, but the Border Patrol caught us. One of the guys behind me got kicked in the face. We ran and hid, and they grabbed us like dogs, like animals, and they hit us.
The most disturbing report comes from an international human rights group.
We had a very startling and depressing array of findings of physical assault, some of which resulted in the deaths of the migrants or serious injuries, sometimes with arms, sometimes without the use of arms.
The INS dismisses the report as rehashing past charges, and the head of the agency is extremely upset that any attention has been given to it.
If anybody used their brains at all, they would know that any time we have between 2,000 and 3,000 people coming across the border illegally, between San Diego and Tijuana, we're sure not abusing anybody very much, or they wouldn't be coming across the border in those numbers.
The INS says there's been no substantial complaints of abuse in more than a year, but human rights groups say that's because there's no system in place for illegals to file complaints. Even so, the INS says unless proof of widespread abuse is presented, it'll be business as usual along the border. Greg Lamont, CNN, Tijuana, Mexico.
As we reported earlier, angry farmers blocked traffic near Paris today in a protest of EC-mandated subsidy cuts. CNN's Christiane Amanpour takes a look at the demonstration and the emotions that prompted it.
The tractors started rolling into position before dawn as thousands of farmers from all over France prepared to blockade Paris. Thousands of police, paramilitaries and riot squads confronted them. The farmers had said they wouldn't incite any violence, but at several barricades, the tractors started to break through police lines, scattering the armed forces. By dawn, traffic was backed up for miles on the highways to Paris. Riot police quickly regrouped and began firing tear gas to disperse the farmers. The farmers are protesting cuts in European agricultural subsidies.
C'est pour que cette réforme ne passe pas.
We're here to prevent the reforms from going through. What we're telling the French government is that we oppose them.
They say that cutting their subsidies will drastically reduce their income.
If
the reforms go through, we'll lose 30 to 40% of our revenue.
French farm subsidies are among the highest in Europe, and farmers have long been protesting plans to cut them. But European community ministers have now agreed to slash grain subsidies by 30% and beef subsidies by 15%. It'll affect some 10 million farmers in Europe. It's aimed at making the EC more competitive and to reduce massive surpluses. The U.S. is spearheading the move in order to wrap up negotiations on GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. The farmers say they'll continue their blockade until the agricultural reforms are scrapped. And although they're the loudest and most visible of the anti-Europe protesters, the farmers by no means represent the majority of public opinion in France. A new poll says more than half the French would vote yes in a referendum on Europe scheduled for September. And even as the farmers are blockading Paris, parliamentarians are meeting in a special session at Versailles to vote on constitutional changes needed to bring France in line with the new Europe. Christiane Amanpour, CNN, Paris.
Police in South Africa say they have rounded up scores of suspects in last week's massacre at a squatters' camp. At least 39 people were killed in that assault, which led the African National Congress to suspend its negotiations with the government. ANC leaders met again today and said they have uncovered a military conspiracy, one aimed at enabling the white minority government to retain its power. The ANC says details of what it calls Operation Thunderstorm are to appear in the July edition of a magazine the ANC publishes.
Coming up on World Day, the ongoing search for the whereabouts of a missing Exxon executive. And travelers around the world may benefit from something adopted by the European community. Details just ahead.
Welcome to Hotel Views, the family getaway, Holiday Inn or Ramada. Bob?
Susan, you simple-minded sap. When I go away, I stay at Holiday. I go to the same room, the same restaurant, the same pool with the same wife and kids. Why change?
Bob, you hangnail. Ramada has comfortable rooms, nice restaurants and pools, just like Holiday. But at Ramada, kids, including teens, always stay free. See, change is good. Don't you ever change anything, like your socks? There's no argument. Ramada's in, Holiday's out.
Usually, when you send flowers